More medications, less health. Something's broken. Traditional medicine manages symptoms, but true healing addresses root cause. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer. At Beyond the Pills, we merge ancient wisdom with modern day science to inspire you through stories of transformation, practical trainings, and holistic healing. Join me and other practitioners as we guide you towards vibrant health, body, mind, and spirit, and move beyond symptom management into true healing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond the Pills. I'm Josh Rimini, your host, pharmacist turned healer. And today I have a amazing person to help us with these beautiful Beyond the Pills conversations. I have Dr. Mima here with us. How are you today, my dear?
So well. Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm just going to read your little bio here so we can get started, because Dr. Mima and I are like the same but different. Like, it's just so cool to have these conversations when we first got going. And I'm excited to have a really robust conversation about where we are and what we're doing, because it's very much similar pathways. So Dr. Mima, she's an MD. She combines over 20 years of experience as a scientist and an MD with a deep commitment to guiding individuals toward oneness and wholeness. As a physician, researcher, and healer, she bridges the gaps between body, mind, and spirit, integrating functional medicine, nutrition, and laboratory science with spiritual insights. Her research on environmental toxins explores their impact on the body systems. We'll talk about epigenetics today, I'm sure, and how trauma and toxins disconnect individuals from their innate wholeness. As CEO of Mamansa, she offers personalized evidence-based care, helping patients align their physical, emotional, and spiritual health. Dr. Mima also speaks on longevity, wellness, and environmental health, leading transformational retreats to empower individuals to reconnect with their true purpose and unlock their fullest potential. Welcome, Dr. Mima.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Josh. I'm excited to talk about all this.
It's so fun. Like, oh my God, like, we're going to have so much fun. Only because, like, if I had to read that and just put Josh, like, it would be almost the same, except coming from a pharmacist lens. Wholeness, getting people body, mind, spirit, functional medicine, not just the chemicals. So tell us a little bit about Dr. Mima.
Yeah, well, I think what's probably most relevant for many people is my human experience, right? Like, yeah. We've done all these things and we've had these credentials, but in many ways, I'm so grateful for this journey, the academic journey, but I'm even more grateful for my personal journey, because that's what has really opened me up and made me understand what people need and how I can be of service, to what is a pretty complex world right now. In so many ways, there's a lot of energy and different things that are conflicting, misalignments, untruths, in the world right now. And that sort of reflects, I believe, the macrocosm is very much reflected in our bodies and vice versa. What's happening outside is clearly a reflection of what's happening inside. And so, we have this unique, set of credentials that allow us to speak to people and look inside their bodies as doctors, right? And so I'm so grateful for that ability to potentially heal on the micro level what is also taking place energetically on the macro level. So does that make sense? So that's really
for sure. And the way I look at it is it's the microscope or the telescope. Like, we've got both ways of looking at life and in the body, right? We know this whole body thing down to the molecular level, but we also need to take this out. Like, this is why that's the holistic approach, right? We have to go both ways. So I love where you started with that, because when you're in the practice of wellness, which we are, right? Not just this, I call it like not the less sick care model. It's the well care model, the proactive approach. 100% of the people I've interviewed, talked to, collaborate with, 100% of them have had their own wellness journey of healing or someone very close to them. So let's talk about that. You opened the door. So let's talk about your journey, because it wasn't always that way for you, right? You're a traditional MD.
Yes. I was very much, I would say, relatively unconscious as a human. I always had a spiritual connection to the divine being, whatever you want to call it, universal truth, universal consciousness, but it was clouded. The channel was clouded. And that's why I have a lot of empathy now for people who are not necessarily seeing the light, if you will, because I didn't either. And it was really my journey into my own healing that allowed me to clear the path so that I could fully channel and be connected to source, which is where I've landed now. And, had I not had this experience of this, what I call cleanse, which was really my own journey through my own trauma, right? So that cleansing process, if I didn't go through that, I would not have this access that I have now today. And so I'm super grateful for it. But going through it was extremely difficult. And I definitely started in a place where I think a lot of our population today is right now, which is clouded, full of toxins, full of assumptions and, judgments and programming, that we came in from childhood, traumas that were inflicted upon us, whether it's your family or your ancestors. And so, what that does is it creates, kind of what I call a dissonance in our ability to feel fully connected to the planet, to each other, to our, to other humans, to other creatures, to nature. That connection is not there for everyone to easily access. And this is something that we often forget once we're sort of the when we consider ourselves spiritual, right, or connected, we forget that a lot of people just can't feel it. They don't understand. They can't connect. So this is why I think, my journey was accelerated. It was very fast. It was very intense. And it was a process of relieving and cleansing and clearing these traumas so that I could be here now and be able to have this conversation. But yeah, I can get into the details if you'd like.
Well, but the thing is really important for folks that listen, because, everyone's on where I feel, and I think you're in the same boat, is like, we're coming against this new humanity, right? This new cycle of humanity where we're more open, where our consciousness is open. We're seeing all these things appear. And we're coming into a whole new age, and we see this, right? There's this conflict. There's this duality of all this. There's the Dems and the Republicans. There's this, it's that. This whole system's moving in this direction. But you didn't get there overnight, right? We didn't get there overnight because, you went to medical school. You started practicing medicine. There was some place in your own journey, and also I feel like in our patient's journey, where we just talk to us about that part first. Like, let's back up into like the person you were, right?
Yes.
The person that we can call it plugged in or unaware, or like, but there was a place where you went through the normal way, right? The normal way, where you went through this space in your journey, where you just did what we like. Hey, you go to school, you go to medical school because you want to help people, or you want to heal people, or whatever that word was for us to be in the health provider space.
Yes.
And then you accumulate all this debt, you burn out, like the whole process of becoming a physician. And then there was so talk to us about that time before the time, and then quickly move into like, hey, where was the aha? I want to know where that was for you. For me, it was microdoses, like there like a period of years. And then all of a sudden it was like, we have that awakening, right? Like that whole period of time where it's like, is this it kind of thing? Or is it, and Mary, because for me, I don't know if this is for you, and this is why we're having a beautiful conversation. Like for me, my own health healing journey sort of was in parallel with my professional life, right? Mm-hmm. I started learning more for myself, but I started then applying it to my practice of pharmacy, like clinical nutrition, then functional medicine. Then it started into a little bit of the energy stuff with meditation and mindfulness and integrative health. And then, then it got over here, and now I'm like already into like post-tribal shamanism stuff and plant medicines. We'll talk all about that. But where were you in your journey to get that? When was that thing? There's always that thing, right?
Mine was very intense. So it was a short period of time that was incredibly intense that taught me what trauma is and what trauma does to the body and the brain. And I guess, I'll start there because that was the biggest impact for me. So, at the end of my training, I went to white collar, high caliber medical training in a top institution. And I was one of these sort of like overachievers, always wanted to go for the best, be the best. And this idea of this concept of best, wanting to get, set my goals on things and sort of like really, really was striving for things. And I still have these qualities in me that I'm working on actually to try to balance. But this kind of reached its peak at the end of my training, because what happened was I was pregnant, and I got pregnant at a time that I didn't expect. It was before I was completely finished with all my stuff. And it was with somebody that I had met that was wonderful, but I didn't know that well. And I really faced this fork that many women face, is that, a lot of women put pregnancy aside to fulfill their careers. And then sometimes it's too late, where they cannot have a child successfully. And they face this challenge of like, am I going to choose a relationship and being a mother, or am I going to choose my career? So I was there, but I was sort of like almost gifted this opportunity to be a mother at the end of my training. But again, I wasn't quite ready. It wasn't a firm yes. However, I decided to go ahead with it and take on this, this opportunity really to become a mother. But at the time, my own mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was facing a little bit of like, sadness, from my mom and this, newness of this potentially, being a mom myself. Now her condition was pretty aggressive. And at the time, believe it or not, I was studying breast cancer in the lab. And I was like looking at cells in the lab and trying to understand what was going on with the cancer itself. And I remember having this thought. And this is, after having studied nutrition. So I had a master's in nutrition. My mom was one of the healthiest people you'll ever meet. She did yoga every day. She was, just nonstop into nutrition. She was just like eat extremely healthy, and she cooked very well and very healthy for the whole family. So it was shocking to me that she got cancer and breast cancer, and also shocking to the entire family. Now, I remember being in the lab looking at these cells thinking, how do these cancer cells actually invade the environment? Like what happens? How do they break through? What is it that causes them to get out? Well, number one, there's a boundary invasion. So in order for cancer cells to get out into the environment, the outside environment, they have to invade the boundary of the capsule that they're in. So, now we understand what that means on an energetic level, or I do. At the time, I had no idea that there's an energy factor around cancer as well. So there's a boundary invasion that takes place. The other thing that has to happen is the cells around the capsule need to be relatively weak, or not so healthy, so that the cancer can go in and invade them and steal their nutrients and essentially take over the body. So not only is it the capsule, but it's actually the health of the cells around that keep the cancer at bay. And because cancer is always forming in our bodies, right? It's constantly there. It's coming and going. Cells are mutating all the time, but our body has this capability to get rid of these toxins. And, they're considered toxins in the body once they mutated. So in my mother and in many people who cancer occurs, the health of the cells around is not top, top of line. And the boundary's been invaded. So energetically, there's these two major things. Now, at the time, I had no idea about cancer and from an energetic standpoint, because I was relatively unconscious. I was just going through the motions, like you said, and, being an excellent, doctor / trainee, and doing, amazing research. I was at Stanford at the time, working with one of the top breast cancer researchers, but I couldn't help my mother. And it really broke my heart that she was so far down in the disease process. And I knew not enough about alternative therapies at the time that I could not give her the proper guidance, the proper advice for her to be able to have another option. And so she went down the conventional route and it aggressively progressed and she died. Unfortunately, her death came at the same time as when I was in labor. So, yeah. So for me, this was really the most difficult, was being in labor with my new baby that was about to come and losing my mother at the same time. I remember receiving the phone call from my brother at the time, who I had a lot of strange issues with, where we weren't really speaking. We had a lot of family problems for many years. He calls me up and says, Mom's going to die. And I'm currently in labor when I received this call from him. So of all people to receive the news from, being in labor, finding out my mom's about to die, my body went into complete freeze mode. And my soul essentially almost left me. And I remember saying, I do not want this. Because remember, even the pregnancy when it came in was like a question. It's like, am I ready? And then I'm going into labor now. And I went into this full I do not want this to take place. I somehow believed that the two were deeply connected and that my mom passing and my daughter coming were potentially the same soul. And that I was this vessel for both life and birth at the same time. And it was not a responsibility I wanted to take on because I didn't know.
Right. It's like the you look at the from a humanity perspective, like what could potentially be like life and death right at that same pivotal point, right? Because just one of those events is a peak emotional experience, right? It's like, and then, and the spectrum, right? I can only imagine.
Exactly.
It's a fractured exit. Like, how do you even
exactly?
You can't comprehend those at the same. It's kind of like telling someone that they're in fight or flight and in rest and digest at the same time. It's almost impossible for the mind to comprehend that. I can't imagine how that impact had on you.
It was awful. It was exactly, the word fracture is exactly what took place. And it was a fracture in my consciousness and my existence. I don't know what the right answer was, but all I know is that what I did was I withdrew. Now, should I have gone into it, with more strength, with more courage, and just, gone through it and gone through the labor and said, this is my role here, then maybe I would have had a different outcome. But after that, everything shifted to a fractured reality for me. And so that was a very impactful moment. I never really properly grieved my mother. That's when I learned about grief and complex grief, and how when grief comes in during pregnancy, it actually embodies you. It comes into your physical being. So grief was actually now part of my physical being, not at all something I would have asked for, and we know the outcome of that, right? Like the importance of processing grief. And I think the country is in grief right now. There's many people that are really, truly grieving. And grief is something we really need to address in all aspects in medical care and a personal level. We should all be understanding the stages of grief, what that involves, how to process it. We're constantly dealing with loss. Sometimes it's like a breakup or a change in a job or, losing a family member. But we don't really address grief in medicine. And we definitely don't address it even when we're speaking to our loved ones, So this was really significant for me because I went through probably 5 years of complex grief after that without understanding what was taking place until it was actually through plant medicine that I received all this information and was able to process the grief from 5 years prior. From the incidences that took place. And that wasn't just the end of it. That was one incident, where there were two events that took place really close together. The birth of my mom and the near-death experience. I even confuse them when I talk about them. The birth of my daughter and the death experience of my mom coming together. But I had 1 month later, I had another really intense experience. It was 3 very intense experiences of traumas that took place in a row. And the third one was actually my now ex-husband who attempted suicide about 1 month after these two events had taken place. So I bring this up because I know there's many people who don't talk about suicide. And especially in the medical community, there are a lot of people that have faced these questions for themselves and sometimes witnessed that in loved ones. And I was one of these people who felt a lot of shame around this topic. And so it's important to bring voice to this because I believe shame is extremely toxic. And it's time to put an end to shame. And that, we all have our shadows. We all have our skeletons in the closet. We all have our darkness. And the more we can safely expose, whatever parts of us that need light, that need to be seen, that need to be exposed, the more we can feel comfortable around each other's shame, each other's, skeletons in our closet. And the more we can normalize these things to realize that it's not that bad, that we can actually, be on this planet, be together, love one another, even with these skeletons in our closet, so.
Well, that's the point. Thank you for sharing too. These are deep things, but love the word normalize because it's the human experience. Like we all, sometimes, some of these buzzwords now are coming out and they almost become less powerful. Like I think every other person in the country now says something about trauma, but it's a big deal. But at the same time, and it's part of the human experience, right? So shoving it down, I want you to talk because, this whole concept of emotional distress and this emotional body and how this affects the physical, right? Because it's this downstream effect. And then also working the body from an energetic perspective to clear the emotional, to clear the physical. But was that taxing on you in your body? Like, because a lot of people think we're not connected. I had a real deep experience, conversation with a physician about this body mind connection, if you will. There's no one. He said it great. It was in one of our episodes where we talked about, like, there's no one point where we say, well, there's the mind and then it shifts to the body, right? There's no no connector point. There's no definition there. But because we're trying to work on all 3 of these modalities, if you will, or components of our being to make us whole, but these traumatic events have an effect on your body, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So talk to people about that because we got to associate more with these downstream effects. We talk about downstream, upstream all the time in functional medicine, right? But we talk about it from a physical perspective, but the emotional traumatic peak emotional experience you had. 3, the trifecta, right, of this space really does affect the whole thing, right? It moves it in the direction. So talk to people a little bit about this connection of what are the effects of this? Because I think a lot of I don't want to say a lot of people, but a lot of people just associate like trauma as an emotional thing. Right? It's just the thing that happens in the mind. It's not a physical thing, but we know that these things trap in our bodies. They manifest in things like cancer and all these other manifestations of imbalance and dis-ease. And so talk a little bit about that, because I know that you and I have the same like philosophy.
Yeah. The mind and the body are one, and I think that I even believe the spirit and the body are one. If your body is not clear as a vessel, it's very difficult to connect fully with spirit. So that's, I was very lucky because 5 years later, I received the blessing of being introduced to plant medicine. But I will speak to the physical mind-body connection. So after that first introduction, the trifecta, as you call it, I started having some very strange sensations show up in my body. And I remember I had started to study with Deepak Chopra, and this was just a side thing. I was like still doing my training. I was actually now working. I was not training anymore. I was working. And I should just say for those who are watching this that are in the medical field, after that trifecta, it was almost like an ego death for me, where everything just shut down. And I was like, my brain went into full, inflammation. And I really started to feel and understand what trauma can do to the nervous system, but also to the brain. I wasn't able to study properly. Now I'm somebody who had like built my life around my ability to do well on exams,
Yeah, you built it off your brain. So what does it do? What did it do to your brain? Like, talk to people, because I think that we want to associate this with this. It's not like, oh, this or this. You said it's it's like this whole connection. Like the hippocampus shrinks, right? Like we go into this whole process of like foggy brain, can't forget anything all of a sudden. And then we talk about the inflammatory responses of like a sudden onset Alzheimer's and dementia. Like this is a real thing.
This is a real thing. And trauma plays a big role here. So full on neuroinflammation, not being able to study, not being able to think straight, not realizing at the time how much this had to do with trauma. So that I'm also in this process now of self-blame. I bring this up so that other doctors or other providers can understand, like when you are in neuroinflammation and you're not able to think straight and you're forgetting things and this is a very real medical condition that needs to be addressed around trauma and also for our patients. We need to really think about what trauma does in the immediate state to the body. And the first thing that should come to mind is neuroinflammation. What can you do to help people reduce that? Now, I didn't have anything hit my head. I didn't have trauma to the brain. This was all psycho-emotional trauma that took place, but yet I felt that right away. And, to the point where I went to see a psychiatrist, I was like, something is going on. I didn't realize I was having complex grief, right? And that a lot of that was also at play here. But I went right away to the psychiatrist and I said, something's off, that I don't know if I'm depressed. Like I'm still smiling, I'm somebody who can really compensate with keeping the smile on the face, but I'm still smiling. I don't feel depressed, but something's off because I'm not doing well on my exams, And so she put me on Vyvanse. Of all things, on a stimulant.
Yeah, let's jack that up a little higher. Yeah.
Instead of addressing neuroinflammation, which was, what was underlying it all. So, enter functional medicine. This is when functional medicine became a reality in my life because I started to understand these things, like you said, through my own journey, the neuroinflammation. In parallel, my daughter started, she went into emergency C-section. So when my mom had passed away, my body went into full closure. I wasn't able to even continue with the labor. She went into emergency C-section. My body would not produce breast milk. I was like feeling so down on myself because I told myself all these years, I'm going to be completely natural. I'm going to use a midwife. I'm going to be, breastfeeding until she's 2 and all this stuff. And my body wouldn't produce any milk. So, everything, full ego death at that moment. Right. And also to educate the exams and all this stuff. So, so it was very difficult for me. But I also learned a lot, about functional medicine at that point because she was also my guru. My daughter was one of my teachers. When she came out, she was blue in the NICU, and I remember holding her and watching my mom pass away on the Zoom screen because I wasn't able to be with her. Yeah. It was really, really one of those, like you said, it was one of those moments where you don't know if you're supposed to be happy or sad, and it was completely fractured. But she was blue and not breathing initially. And, we had a really hard time connecting because I was also so, disconnected. So her and I really had a hard time connecting, for several years after that, birth experience, for that, what the normal mother and baby would get to have. We did not have. And she had some very serious eczema show up, like bleeding, patches on her skin. She was given formula feeding because I wasn't able to breastfeed. So all of this in hindsight was a gift because when my, ex at the time had to go to the ICU after, when he had attempted suicide, I was able to hand my daughter over to somebody and give them the bottle and say, please take care of her while I go to the hospital. So, in hindsight, it was all, divinely planned, but I felt so awful about myself that I wasn't able to breastfeed because there is all this pressure on women. If you can't do these things, you're not a good mother, so I just want to also normalize all this for people and make it, make it a reality that this happened, things happen, and we need to stop feeling bad about ourselves and, holding these stories, for so many years about how awful we are just because these natural, these incidences take place in ways that you don't even yet understand because in the future you might look back and see how it was a divine intervention. But, so she started to develop all these skin conditions. And, that's when I realized that the C-section was the root cause. And I started to understand the microbiome and, what her body needed. I put her on like a 2-year-old, she was on like a gluten-free, dairy-free diet, and by 5 or 6, her skin had completely cleared off, but she was probably the only child that ever went to a birthday party and had like a goat icing cake that was gluten free, that's like as a 3-year-old. So that was my early experience to what nutrition can do for even children and how it can help, children and mothers in the process when kids do show up with things on their skin. Now, her condition was a direct response to her trauma, right? Like her trauma, so talking about the physical manifestation, manifested in a physical condition right away, immediately on her skin. And that, required and is still a process of healing, that we're still handling different aspects of it. Now, there was attention stuff that showed up, anxiety that showed up, all kinds of things in her journey. Just looking at that, one little baby that was born in the middle of trauma and how her life evolved as well. So, she's like my little teacher, but I definitely have had my own journey of that. But like I said, 4 or 5 years later, it just got to be too much. The trauma, those 3 incidences and what that had done to me psychologically, emotionally was so much that it would show up around me in the form of relationships, connections. I wasn't able to really connect with people, to articulate myself properly, to really feel heard or understood by anyone. And everything's just sort of like that fracture that took place continued in all aspects of my relationships in my life, including my ex-husband who had recovered fully from his incident. But our relationship never fully recovered from that. My relationship with all my friends, my family, and people around me never fully recovered. So it was one day when one of my best friends said to me, I think I might have something that you want to try that is different from anything that you've done before. you might want to look into this. I have a friend who's hosting a ceremony in Peru, and I would love to take you. And that was the beginning of when I got introduced to ayahuasca and plant medicine. And it was really through the gifts of my friend and the trust that we had, that I had in her, because she knew my whole journey and she was, witnessing all of it. To really just say yes to something that I was previously very against. The idea of taking any substances was not something that I believed in. I classified it as a drug. I felt very judgmental about anybody who did anything that was considered a drug. I was very much like, your typical straight and narrow person in that way. But I really reached a peak of nothing else working, and me realizing that this was beyond me and that I wanted to try whatever it took to get some help. And so there we were, the two of us, flying into Peru, taking boats and scooters and, all kinds of different transportation. I think it was like a 30-something hour journey altogether, into the deep jungle of Iquitos in, where the sacred plant is grown, where the Shipibos originally started growing ayahuasca. And I had a very, very authentic experience for my very first time using ayahuasca in the jungle, which I'm very fortunate to have received. And I can understand the influence of that now. But it was at the time quite extreme, going from who I was to being in these little, tambos in the middle of the jungle in Peru with complete trust, but scared. I was so scared about what that experience would bring. And I completely now understand people's fear around it, because I was one of those people so afraid about having this substance, intrude on my physiology. I really had this, I was like, this substance is going to come in and take over my consciousness and take over my internal sense of self. And I don't know if I approve that. That was what I was going through in my mind. And that those same questions came through during ceremony as well, as that, this fear that I had was very much, there and present, but I still really had reached this point where I was like, I don't know what else to do. So I'm just going to have to do this, and I'm going to have to trust this. And I did. And I'm so glad I did, because, now years later of having worked with plant medicine, and really understanding, the sacred, union that it provides between us and the planet and us and consciousness, I couldn't imagine me being here today to be able to talk about this without it, because what I went through, I probably, like you said, have some sort of very serious disease by now. If it weren't,
I'm floored just because, I'm doing this because I did the same thing, right? So I went through the same journey, the same stuckness. I actually went through the whole component of the jungles of Peru and the thing, and going at even the Tambo and the place and the Shipibo healers. So it's kind of interesting how we're on this same conversation, right? Yeah. So the way I look at it, though, is we can't talk about what happened to me during these things, because there really isn't a vocabulary, right? There's not a vocabulary to tell the what, but we can tell people what we learned through our experience, and and the way I look at it is the plants weren't the only piece. It's definitely, like you said it, you did it the OG way, you did it the way that was been done for thousands of years. That was really important for me too. I wanted to be that sacred space. I had 4 Shipibo healers singing their songs to us in their ikiros, and it's that, again, the 3. It's your part, your intention, what you're doing, the medicine's part, and the healer's part, all in one, coming into this place and getting you closer to nature, and moving through your conscious awareness through where I would call is coming up against your stuff and going through it, right? Getting up to that darkest night of the soul and not bouncing off and getting hit down. It's you get up, you move, and you move through it. And then on the other side of that is where this healing happens. It just happens like in this beautiful, awesome space where I just felt like, and you knew what you knew going in. Like for me, it was like, I knew that I'd have this liberation of energy would happen. I don't know what that meant at the time. I didn't know. I just knew, like, I'm trusting this process. I'm saying yes to things I would never thought I would have said to. And then I went, and then it happened. And then it was like, boom, like all of a sudden everything just unfolded. Like I would call it an alignment, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you said a fracture, and that for me, it's like the jigsaw puzzle of life was out there. It was there. It was clear. But the pieces weren't together, but the life part was. It was like, oh, this is your plan. You kind of know. But now it's like, so now let's talk about the other side. You went through that. You got through it. And now you are whole, right? Now you are moving in this beautiful Dr. Mima, who she is. Like, I'm reading we got to talk about environmental toxins and longevity and wellness, but transformed, right? The word transformation is very different than change or adversity, right? The caterpillar that becomes the butterfly can't go back. That's a transformation, right? So you've gone through your own journey. Like, this isn't something you went to school for, right? And then you go, well, I'm just going to prescribe Peru ayahuasca to you and you go do your thing. Like, you went through I call it the wounded healer's journey, right? We went from here and you moved through your own hero's journey, and now you're on the other side, and now you're helping other people. Now you're moving through this. You're doing retreats and you're helping people, love this, reconnect with their true purpose and unlock their fullest potential. That has nothing to do with diagnose and treat, by the way.
No. We're just there to guide. I mean, when I say we, I mean those of us in healthcare, we're there to guide. We're there to point people in different directions, provide resources, look, with a microscope because we can, or, a telescope, like you said, because we can. But really, it's their journey and it's each individual's journey. I think that's one thing that I really have come to appreciate. I always did understand, but now really appreciate is how unique each of us are. And, in this concept of wholeness, I think we need to also understand the beauty of every single tree and every single flower being unique. And each of us is a different tree or different flower in the garden of life. And this, each of us has this unique, blueprint and footprint that we're going to leave behind. And I even call it like a voice print. Sometimes I've noticed people are very afraid to speak. They're afraid of their voice. They're afraid to sing. And in my experience with the plant medicine has really taught me that we have this capability to leave these influences on the energy of not just our current, state, but of like all consciousness if we choose to express ourselves. And the process of clearing your trauma and finding your soul and connecting with your soul so that it can be expressed is the ultimate purpose of life. It's why we're here. And, my job as a healer and a provider is to help people identify that, understand that, and learn to express that. Because the more we allow these traumas to prevent that expression, the more likely that disease will show up and take away the opportunity to have that, wholeness achieved in this lifetime.
I love that. We're talking at this high level here, but we're talking as people that have been classically trained, right? Classically trained through the system. It's one part of the whole, right? The way I look at it now is like, oh, I'm 49. I'm turning 50 this year. I learned half of it. I'm opened the door to the other half, and now I'm great. Like this completeness is what we're talking about. We're not talking about making you less sick, or even we talked about this in another episode, is the difference between, healing and curing, right? In this, we're always like worried about curing the disease or disease, but it's the opposite that's true. We're here to be whole. We're here to be in our own space. The only reason disease occurs is because there's an imbalance.
Yeah.
Right? There's no you can't really pinpoint the disease factor. It's really the imbalances that happen. So on this energetic level, this traumatic level, but in all different levels. And so I loved how you reframed this, because we all had to go through our own journeys too, not just as our own, we always just say we're patient number one, right? The way I do it when we talk to pharmacists about all this healing and wellness stuff is do you first. There's no practitioner of healing that hasn't gone, even in the Shipibo way, it's the shamanic journey, right? They go through death almost to get through their thing. So we said it in our intro call, there's a calling now. The calling is true healing, true purpose, and unlocking human potential in each and every one of us is what we do now. It's not that we're here to prescribe you a medicine. Yeah, those are necessary for imbalances that have gotten out of balance. But then we've got to move towards wholeness and balance. Everybody on the planet has a purpose. It doesn't have to be a big purpose. It just has to be your purpose.
Correct. Yeah. And the way that I see it now is that it's not outside of us. If I were to describe it, it would be the center point within your being. And the direction is inward, which my whole life I lived thinking it was outward, that I'm going somewhere, reaching something. But now I really, as I get more wise, I don't even call it aging. I call it getting more wise. You are moving more and more towards your center, and everybody's center is different, but obviously, connected to the source, right? That is the oneness, the unity. But we, in this process of exploration of our lives, and I really encourage you to explore your trauma. It's as hard as it was, to go through it. It was a lot of fun. I don't know, I don't know if you can reflect on it.
The fear comes from, we're all kind of a little bit afraid of what's in there, right? There's always this, fear drives a lot of our behaviors, but it's funny. I'm a cancer survivor too. I didn't know if you knew that. We're going through our own journey. It was difficult during the journey, but it's only a moment in time, because we're talking about it like it's almost a dream, like it's a thing that happened, because in the moment it's always scary. You're getting to the cliff and you're not sure, right? But then all of a sudden you jump and it was oh, that was fun. Yeah, I didn't know why I was all up here, right? So I love that curiosity you have. The way I see wholeness in that center, and I love how you preface we live most of our first part of our lives, or the first few decades, at least for me, up until my fourth decade, going into my fifth, is that outside world, right? But it's really about the inside world. And so the way I've framed it up, having conversations around this as well with other people that are in this space now, is really the full potential here, true purpose, really what it means to me is living your full authentic self.
Yes. Thank you.
Because if you really want to think about it, right? If you could be you and only what because everyone knows what that is. There is no faking authenticity. It's the opposite, right? But we're always trying to we do something in fear of somebody's reaction, or maybe they won't. And all of a sudden it's no, but if you're in your true authentic self, you're at a higher level of everything, and it just does what you do, and you become you. And then all of a sudden it's just a natural thing in the world. So yeah. I love that you own that inside piece, because that's a lot of people that are listening to this stuff. They may be in different places in their journey. Yes. And I love how you said that. We are the guides in the journey. but it's the patient, it's everyone. We all have our own journey. But I did want to say one thing. That doesn't mean that you're alone.
Right.
Right? You had guides. Guides are people that help you along the way. They're cheering you up the mountain.
Right.
But, in well care, even in the simplest of facts, is like lifestyle medicine and changing your diet and doing the right things for you. We call it patient-centered, right? But what that really means is you're in the driver's seat. Nobody can stop you with whatever you put in this thing to drink, whether it's medicine or poison. It's your choice. It's all of us doing the things we need to do to empower. However, I love the Pareto principle 80-20, right? So for me, 80% of people will follow through with a plan with a guide. So find your guide, call them a coach, whatever you want to call them. But the meaningfulness of that is we have people in this universe now, in this planet, in this space where your bio, it's backed by science. None of this is like, I think some people want to hear the woo-woo stuff. Some people want to hear the science. For me, modern day medicine is really the merging of them, right? Energy is just, you could talk about it as a quantum thing. You could talk about it down the level of science if our West brain has to do that. But it makes it whole. We can't treat the body without the mind, without the soul, without the spirit.
Exactly.
We can, but we don't get the same outcomes. We get a very long, drawn out thing with symptom resolution for the rest of your life and not fulfilled. And all of a sudden you die and go, what?
Right.
Versus, I always say people have the right to be vibrantly healthy.
Exactly.
When you put the word vibrant in front of that, it changes it because that's your definition, right?
Yes.
We all have our own definition. So I love this. How do people find you? Where are we going here? Because what I believe here is that wellness has no competition. We're in the medicine of healing now. It's possible. I want people to really understand the things that are possible today were not available to us even 5-10 years ago. Like, you don't need to go to the depths of Peru and drink ayahuasca and go all in to be healed. There's different ways to do this. We can do holotropic breath work. We can do meditation. We can do the genomic profiling. We can do these things. So the world is sick and we need healers. So how do people find you if they resonate here? Because I want people to be able to have access to these beautiful, wonderful humans that are on this planet to heal.
Thank you. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, I have a website. So anybody who wants to contact me directly can just find me at www.mimageere.com. That's my name, mimageere.com. But I want to also put out my vision. And I'm in the process of building out a business plan. And this is for those who might be interested in potentially being investors or partners in some way, to build a holistic longevity center on the West Coast. And I'm right now looking at properties and figuring out exactly what's going to be in there and what it's going to be. But really, the focus is on everything we've talked about. So it's longevity from the standpoint of all three: mind, body, and spirit. Because often longevity is just about the body. And like you said, it ends up in being a very fractionated idea of life and of longevity.
And it becomes really expensive really quick when you're just playing with the body and you're throwing all the biohacking and all the supplements, but we're still not getting to the wholeness. But I love that concept. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a bit of, there's a bit of fractured energy when you think about people who are just focused on the body. So it's very important to think about the whole human in your own evolution, to really be happy, like you said, to be vibrant. What I call in the Ayurvedic system, it is Ananda Maya Kosha. It's Ananda, which is bliss. And it's one of our layers of being. Ananda is our last layer. It's bliss layer. And we all have access to this feeling of bliss. And, what's really beautiful about plant medicine is it lets you really have a tangible feeling of what that is. So you know where you're headed and what you're trying to achieve in that bliss state. But you also have that same vibrancy and bliss in a deep sense of purpose or a deep spiritual practice or being around, people that you love and being in a space of true well-being. So that part of longevity is what I would like to bring in addition to all the science and the epigenetics and the predictive medicine that currently exists and is also the future of it and what's possible around the microbiome and other things. But the holistic aspect, like I said, has been missing. So I have also in parallel studied Ayurveda, the ancient Indian medicine. And so I combine that in my longevity practice. Right now, people can find me in Los Angeles where I'm seeing patients directly. But I also have this vision to build a holistic longevity center in the LA area, and would love to just put that out there as part of this message for anyone who's interested in collaborating, being an investor, or who's interested in working together. I'd love to put that as a message out as well.
I love that. It's like I'm creating that on the West Coast or on the East Coast. Like that's exactly the same thing. It's like, how do you blend? Because I think it's this marriage now. It's like, all right, we're going to take what I learned in traditional medicine for whatever it's worth. I'm going to add these things in, and all of a sudden now it becomes I call it new age medicine. It's modern day medicine where you have the body, you have the allopathic, you have the other part of it, functional medicine. Then you putting in the environmental things because this world is super toxic, not just the outside stuff, but the inside stuff. So we got to address that. And then we're bringing in the energy. We're bringing in the spirit. We're bringing in these things that have been done. Well, this is part of the podcast. Timeless ancient wisdom meets modern science. It's this.
Exactly.
And it's not because people will go over here and they'll go to Bali and they'll do their thing. And then they'll come over here and they'll go to it's not this dual thing. It's this inherently whole systems based practice, body, mind, spirit, all of it. I love that. So MimaGeere.com, they'll get to you. I can't wait to collaborate. That's one of my big words right now, because none of this is going to happen with singular egoic, this is my practice thing. It's like, no, let's bring in all the pieces and find out. I call them zones of genius, right? What are these practitioner zones of genius where we can create this new model of care rooted around that center of the person, and allowing these guides to come along the way and help people through the whole journey. Amazing. I can't wait to see how this blossoms, because I really believe as well, like the intention with ethics makes this work. Like this is a greater good thing. This isn't I'm just starting a new business thing. This is a greater good, greater for humanity thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
this beautiful conversation, this new friendship that we have. These are the things that matter, right? This is where true healing comes from. We're no longer in the business of symptom management and resolution and diagnosing. And no, we're talking about new level of humanity that's really rooted around healing. So
thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to have this very free-flowing, real conversation. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for sharing your amazing story of transformation as well. And it's this concept that I found last weekend. This is kind of how it ends for me. Is like it's together but not the same. And your story is this blueprint of what I've heard so many times of our own transformation. And then it sparks this whole systems based approach, body, mind, spirit. It's all there. It's all the same. It's all together. but in slightly, like you use Ayurvedic, I'm using shamanic practices of the Americas, like, but it comes together in that same fashion that makes it such a beautiful thing, because we're using all this big brain stuff we learned in technology, because that's another piece we can bring in. But then we're layering it all in, and it's just weaving into this beautiful pattern of this modern day medicine that I'm so happy to be a part of. So
likewise. And yeah, I look forward to building something much bigger than all of us, together. That we really, a prayer that I have.
Well, it is, right? It's bigger than any of us. Yes. And that's the beauty of it all. All right.
Great.
Thank you, guys. This was amazing. Thank you, Dr. Mima. I hope we can maybe do another one of these. This is going to be great. Right. Bye, everybody. Stay well. Thanks for joining me today on Beyond the Pills. If our mission to deprescribe 10 million unnecessary medications resonates with you, share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. Whether you're a practitioner or someone ready to reclaim your health, visit rx2wellness.com for free resources to begin your journey. Together, let's go beyond the pills and co-create a world of vibrant health and true healing. Until next time, live better and stay well.